Hello, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my channel. My name is Mohammad Wali Zafar and today I'll be showing you how to create a damn vulnerable WordPress server on Linux on Microsoft Azure using Terraform. This is the second video of a part of video where we are going to deploy the lab needed for virtually testing foundation, penetration testing and red team. We'll be doing five things in this video. Number one, we will be deploying a network security group. Number two, we will be deploying a public IP address for the machine. Number three, we will be deploying a network interface card for the virtual machine. Number four, we will create an association between the subnet and the network security groups, where the network security group will act as a firewall. Number 5 and the final 4, we will be deploying the Vulnerable WordPress machine on Linux. We will also be using a startup script with this Vulnerable WordPress machine to automatically provision the vulnerable web server using the GitHub. Now, what are network security groups before we start? Network security groups actually act as firewalls where they have rules for egress and ingress, where they define rules based on ports and source and destination IP addresses. In our network security group configuration, we have three rules. We have a rule for port 80, port 443 and port 22. All other ports are hopefully blocked and these three ports are allowed to be accessed. Now we faced two major errors during this deployment. Number one, during my deployment of the rule 443 or the rule for the port 443, I encountered a syntax error because I did not specify the port range correctly. I wanted port 443 to be accessible by both port 80 and port 443. However, I faced an error. Now, because of a little inspiration, what I did, because I understood that PCs can sometimes use other ports to access the website, so I use an asterisk, which means all ports. So I allowed all ports to access port 80 and 443 on the web server. Now for port 22 as well, and then we allowed port 22 on this machine as well. Port 22 is the SSH port. SSH is allowed because as we will see in the video, we had errors that needed us to SSH into the machine to fix. Now when these two, the port 22 had an error, which was that this rule already existed. Now when I checked, this rule did not exist, which was very baffling for me. What I did was change the priority on rule 22 and suddenly it worked out of nowhere. So now all of these three ports, in summary, are able to be accessed by any port on the source machine. So now with the priorities fixed, everything is in place. Let's do Terraform apply and say yes on that one, and in 10 seconds we will have our rules. There we have it. Let's verify them using the portal, and there you see it. So now let's move on to the second step, that's deploying the public IP for our vulnerable WordPress server. Now there are a few properties of an IP or a public IP that you deploy on Microsoft Azure. You need to specify the resource group it is in. Number 2, you need to specify the location. Number 3, you need to specify whether it is to be dynamic or static. Although in our case, because we are not using it for production side, we will assign it to dynamic. And to further to further ease access to our website, we will also be using a domain. The domain name part was a little hard because I could not find it in the documentation. I found the tag alright, but how to use it was not written in the documentation. For this, Stack Overflow for the win, because I found an answer on Stack Overflow that told me how to use the tag, and I went back and I applied the tag as btf.redteam. Now, here's another error. Because domain names, according to Microsoft Azure, cannot contain periods, which was a revelation. So I changed the domain name back to VTF Red Team. The final URL came out to be vdf.azure.cloudapp.com. So once that was done, I it I actually took 2 tries to apply this because I did not like the labels on the code. I had not changed the default labels on the code. I applied it, and within I think 10 seconds we had our IP address up and running. So you can see now we have it added. Let's verify it using the portal, and there you have it with the domain name attached. Okay, let's move to step number 3, deploying the network interface card for our vulnerable WordPress machine. It was the easiest of the deployment by far. So again, we used code from the Hashi Corp documentation. We copied it over to our file and we set the resource group name, the resource group location, and then we also had to attach the public IP to this. So for example, we had the private IP address set to dynamic, but the public IP address was the one we created in the previous step, and we attached it using its ID, as you can see right now on the screen. With everything in place, we ran Terraform plan and then Terraform apply, and then we had our network interface card with the public IP we created in step 2 attached and a private dynamic address already assigned to it. Okay, let's move on to the next step. The step number 4 was creating the subnet and network security group association. Now, in our case, what will happen is that the network security group will act as the firewall for the whole subnet and all the resources within it. So the code available on the HashiCorp documentation and the Microsoft Azure website was about creating a link between the network interface card and the subnet. Alright, so a little research was done on output variables as well. Output variables in Terraform are used to store return values. So if you need the name of the resource being created, you use an output variable. Furthermore, we also faced a few problems in this deployment because we tried to save the plan being created when we ran Terraform plan. So we used the -out flag, but we did not know how to use it. So first time we failed, and then we used the -out is equal to apply, and then it told me that the next time I ran this I would use Terraform apply. So I used it, and in about 5 seconds I had my association, which was then verified using the portal. As you can see, here we have the subnet DMZ attached. On to the final step, that's deploying the virtual machine with the script. It's our first try. It took a lot of tries, by the way, and really it was the hardest of all. So again, we always start using the HashiCorp and the Microsoft Azure documentation as our reference point. we use code from these two documentations. So in this instance, I copied over the code from Hashi Corp, I believe, and then I also searched for how to run scripts on Azure VM on provisioning in Terraform. So it told me that you needed something called Azure VM extension. Basically, extensions are custom scripts or even predefined scripts that you can use uh, to run on VM after provisioning. So when your VM is up, the script is executed and automated tasks take place, like installation of software or creation of user groups or attaching the machine to a domain, for example. So in this instance, as you can see right now on the screen, uh, we copied over the code, we changed the code to do to our our own preferences. We set the resource group name, the resource group location. uh, Furthermore, we also searched for the smallest VM size as well. It turned out it was I think B1 B2. We set the virtual machine type as B1 B2, which was basically 1 gigabyte of RAM and 1 core processor. Also created a new script, installation script, which was basically the install script plus 2 lines of code, which basically cloned the repository, number one, and number two, changed the directory to the clone repository. uh, Furthermore, another error occurred, and as you can see in the video probably a little later, that the Ubuntu version I used, because I'm very efficient, was 20.04 instead of the default declared 18.04. Turns out that Ubuntu 20.04 and 22.04 had different declaration styles, or you can say different declarations than 18.04. But again, Stack Overflow for the win. I found the solution and I was able to set it. So yep, right now we are setting it up and applying it. Terraform, running a Terraform apply, and again, next error. It's the error regarding the key usage. Unfortunately for this, no solution came up, so I was reverted to using a password for my SSH, which was using the admin password tag, and I was able to set it. Then came the next error, and this error was regarding the custom script version, although threw me a lot of errors. So I did a lot of steps. I tried changing the install script to see whether the error was within the install script, uh, by was I doing it all right, or was there any error with the commands I wrote. But uh, with a lot of man hours, the final solution was that it was an error of the version. So we were able to create the virtual machine in about, say, 30 seconds or so, but we were not able to run the script on it. We tried using sudo, we tried adding sudo to all of the commands in the script. We tried using sudo with the command declared in the virtual machine extension, but we were not able to do it. It actually took around 3 hours of constant searching the internet, and I even tried to use commands that did not involve a script, so simple commands like ls, uptime, hostname, to check whether there was a problem with the script or whether there was a problem with the Terraform. Turns out the problem was with the Terraform and my script was alright. So many moments spent Google searching this. We came upon a forum. Although we also tried deleting the virtual machine and reprovisioning it. So we used if we used the first command to get the variants that were in our region, we found that 2.1.7 was the latest. So we tried Terraform apply again, and it told us that we were using the wrong variant because we could not use two suffixes, and we were using two of them, 2.1.7. So instead we had to write 2.1. Once that was done, again, another error. So it took around 40 seconds to get the virtual machine up, but there was another error. So let's give it another try. And the second time out, because it was not finding the script okay, we tried using the base64 script. So basically what happens is that using the script tag, we can specify a script which is converted to base64 as our input. So it takes the base64 string and converts it into a shell file, and then runs it on the VM provisioning all by itself. So instead of giving it a GitHub link, we just give it the script that we just wrote for our new GitHub. We converted it into a string, into a base64 string, and then we just gave it to the script tag. Now what happened was that it started running the script out of somewhere, but it gave us an error. So of course, when we were analyzing the type, and this is the error I want you guys to know, this error was caused by a carriage return error, because in Ubuntu scripts what happened was the carriage did not automatically return to the start of the line. And this error also caused me a lot of headache and cost me a lot of man hours. So what I tried was I tried changing the script, I tried changing things around, using SSH, using a dummy virtual machine to test my script out as well, changing my script to see whether I had additional characters in it or not, but turns out it was not my fault. Again, my script was alright. So what I did was again tried different times with the same script, but then again someone on Stack Overflow on Ubuntu Exchange, I think Ubuntu.Stack Exchange, told me of this fix which used sed. So what it did was it actually returned the carriage to the start, and it was working all right. Now the new error for this was that the Docker version was very different. And another error was another headache that we faced was that we had, every time that we ran the script, it created the object in the virtual machine extension. So every time we needed to redo it, we had to delete the script from the portal. So we deleted the script, we ran it again. It told me that the Docker version was not okay. So in fact, I was of the opinion, I was saying, why is not the Docker version being the best? Because we were running apt update before running these commands. So basically the repositories were updated, so it was fetching the latest version in the repository. So again, using Stack Overflow and other forums, we came to know that the Ubuntu repository contains an older version of Docker which does not support the newer version 3.x file Docker compose files. So we changed our installation script to, instead of installing the Docker using the advanced package manager, we were now installing it using curl, and actually getting the version straight from Docker website. So again, we changed it. We generated the base64 string, we pasted the base64 string, and then I think we were ready to go. So again, we ran Terraform apply, we ran Terraform we ran Terraform plan, we ran Terraform apply. Again, we had to delete the object already being created. So yep. So again, there was an error with the script as well. We fixed it and updated our GitHub repositories for it as well. Actually, something you do not see here is that we also used SSH to check the script whether the script was doing what we wanted it to do, and yes, it was doing what we wanted it to do. So again, the script was uninstalled Docker first, and then it fetched the Docker from the website, and then it installed the newer version of Docker. Once everything was set up, we ran apt vulnerable WordPress. We ran Terraform plan, and then Terraform apply, and it took around It took around 120 seconds for us to provision it, and now you can see that the WordPress site is up. We set it up, installed WordPress. We set up the admin password, admin username, the email, and then final step was, of course, activating the vulnerable plugins. So at the end, I want to thank you for being with me, for hearing my annoying voice for so long, and I hope this video helps you in actually seeing how Terraform helps you deploy resources on Microsoft Azure faster than a manual person can do. And in the next video, we will show you the speed difference between a manual deployment and Microsoft Azure Terraform deployment. Bye bye, take care, and see you in the next video.